So let me introduce myself to you, and let me start by saying that my mom was a teacher in the New York public schools, and then she taught remedial reading to prisoners at the Brooklyn House of Detention. In my campaign, I'm talking about a broken government that's taking away fundamental rights of American citizens. And one of those fundamental rights is to a quality public education, starting with pre-K and going all the way through higher education with continuing skills training throughout your life. When we think about what education means in the United States today, education is the foundation of our prosperity. Everything that we're talking about in terms of being a growing, prosperous, shared economy comes back to education, but it is also the foundation for social and racial justice in our country. So when we're talking to Republicans who view education as an expense, we have to change the entire framework for how we're talking about justice and about our futures. And let me say, this is not something that I've just discovered. I ran Proposition 39 in 2012 in California to close a corporate tax loophole and take the money and use it to rebuild the public schools with union labor. My wife and I started a food program in California schools that are in schools that serve 300 million meals a day to do farm to table so that kids eat healthy food, so they'll be healthier, so that they can perform better in school, and so they can be fed. And before I even thought about running for president this year, I was going door to door in the California legislature talking about a student borrower's bill of rights. So when we think about education, where we put it, we have a completely different idea about how central education is, and we have to accept the idea that unionized public school teachers are the stewards of our future and are absolutely guaranteeing or the possibility of fair, just, shared prosperity in the United States going forward, and should be thought of in that way. Rahima.
Thank you very, very much for being here. Appreciate it.
Nice to see you.
I'm good to see you again.
Take a seat there.
Tom, you bring a perspective to this race. It's interesting because you are an entrepreneur. You've worked in the world of business for a long time, and you understand that despite the conversations we have about paying teachers properly and giving children an adequate and fair education, the failure to do so is a national economic imperative, whether you got kids or not, whether you had kids or not, whether you've got a teacher in your family. We are not necessarily teaching enough people the things we need to be teaching them for the knowledge economy and the STEM economy that we're in. How would you address that?
Look, when I think about American education and the injustices between school districts as well as the overall outcomes, we cannot start early enough. My brother's career has been as an advocate for at-risk children. So I know firsthand over the last 40 years that literally you cannot start early enough. Pre-K, universal, free pre-K is an absolute requirement for our educational system. Look, this is a question of resources, but it's not only a question of resources. Absolutely, teachers are being underpaid, but they're also being undersupported in terms of classroom size, in terms of the wraparound services that they require to do their job effectively. Look, I was talking about food. Yeah, kids need to be fed. They also need nurses. They need mental health support. Teachers need more time to plan their classes and do their job. I'm talking about them being the stewards of prosperity and justice. The way to measure that is number of students that you can fit in per teacher hour. That's the wrong metric. We have to have a broad gauge of what we think success is. We need to resources it and then we need to consistently work towards those outcomes.
But at that level where we have employers, many of them coming from Silicon Valley, but otherwise saying we've actually got a skills gap. We don't have enough people, whether it's college graduates, university graduates, or high school graduates, to fill the jobs of our future. Where do you see that being fixed?
Okay, it does start at pre-K, but let me say this. I don't know how many of you saw the policy I put out this week for historically black colleges and universities. Yep. It's a multiple of anybody else's policy. I am a gigantic believer. Look, the HBCUs have produced the majority of African-American doctors, engineers, judges, and teachers. And they're emblematic of the kind of institution we need to support that provides a pathway and an opportunity for kids to act from all parts of our society to get that leg up to the education they need to fill those jobs. In my home state of California, that function is served largely by the community colleges. We have 2.2 million kids in community college in California. It's basically free. And both statistically and anecdotally, this is the chance for a kid to move into a highly skilled job, to finish their education, but also to bounce into a four-year institution. So I am a gigantic believer in those institutions that reach out to kids and give them that chance. I
got a two-part question. Start with, and they tell me don't lean in, but I lean in. You're preaching to the choir. You're basically preaching to the choir. People here are educators.
Yeah.
Now, do you think that this nation is interested in educating all of its children? I mean, really, honest and truly, based on the evidence that you have seen of the outcomes that we've gotten in this country and the billions of dollars.
Rahima,
I mean, tell me the truth.
Look.
Do you think that America really believes in educating all of its children? And the second part of that question is, if you said you think you call education a fundamental right, some people think you need to put it in the Constitution. Education is not written in the Constitution. And if you think you could do it, how would you do it? It is so difficult to get an amendment to the Constitution.
Okay, so let's start with your basic question. Do I think Americans are ready that quality public education, starting with pre-K and going all the way, is a fundamental right? Obviously, we know not everybody's there. But do I believe that the vast majority, that the Democrats are there, that there are more people for that than the people who are against it? 100%. Let me say this. I have traveled around this country doing town halls. Long before I was running for president, I've done it full-time for 7 years, organizing people in this country. In the Republican states that I've gone to, they all do the same thing. They cut taxes on rich people and corporations, and their next move is to cut education. Every single place. It's not just, Wisconsin and Kentucky and Kansas and Oklahoma. They always do it.
That's why I'm asking you, do you think America cares about education?
And my point here is we have to reframe this argument. The idea that cutting education is cutting expense is the stupidest idea I have ever heard in my life. It's also deeply unjust. So my answer is yes, we have to reframe this argument because actually we all know if we're going to succeed as a society, that means the kids of Compton need a great education and a chance. So do the kids in Kentucky. And it's like, Rahima, if we don't do that, then we're not going to succeed. And everything that Trump's talking about economic growth, baloney. Economic growth, justice, they all hang on people having an opportunity for a great education. And if you look how much we spend on it, I looked it up. We spend 1/10 as much as a federal government on education as we do on defense. Okay, that's our priority. That's wrong. It's just wrong. And if you want to see success, change it. It's a bunch of baloney. And we got to make the point. Look, they are selling in my home state of California, blue state, the idea that teachers are greedy. That's insane. That is insane. But they're getting away with framing this the Ronald Reagan, Donald Trump way, and we're not standing up to them. This is a straight-up fight for justice, but also success.
That's the question.
Yeah,
how do you
Rahima,
change that conversation?
We insist. Take a look. All the facts are on our side. They're telling a bunch of lies that are basically based on racism.
Tom, I want to talk to you about a number of states. Anybody who's looked at these statistics knows that they are heavily concentrated in the Deep South. Corporal punishment is still legal and in use in many schools across America. Between 2013 and 2014, about 100,000 K-12 public school students received corporal punishment. What lever can the federal government use? Should they? And what can they use to stop that?
Oh, my goodness gracious. Of course they should. Money. Look, there's something going on here that is deeply wrong. And I'll give you an example, Rima, because this is a perfect. I was in Georgia, and I was talking to some economic people. And here's what they told me. If you're in the bottom quintile in Georgia, so you're in the bottom 20% of wage-earning families, you have a 1 in 20 chance of moving out as an adult. Can you believe that? That is no social mobility. That is zero justice. That is a failure for America at a deep level that's almost incomprehensible in the 21st century. And it's true. So if we're going to talk about education and where it stands and what it means, we have to understand that we cannot repair this society without repairing our education injustice, that teachers have to be at the center of that. Who runs the classrooms? The idea of not starting with teachers is insane. So if we're going to really change our priorities, we have to tell a different story to America, because the truth is different from what people are saying. And then we have to change our resources and the way it's not just money, though. We have to have a different priority and a different plan and actually resource the plan to succeed here.
I want to double back because I asked you a question, but I didn't get the answer. I don't think I did, and if I did, you tell me I'm wrong. The question of, some people think education should be written into the Constitution. Do you think that's the way to go, or that's not the way we need to go?
Let me say this. If we could get it in the Constitution, I would do it in a minute.
Would you push for it?
Yes, but the question is, can we wait for that? Yeah, we can push, but there's something. These kids are in school now. And, you know, it's a crisis for the country to get it right in time, but it's a crisis for the kids to get it right tomorrow. And so I am going to be pushing day one on things. I mean, my HBCU plan, there's a reason I'm pushing for it, because it's critical now. You know, Title I, the idea of equalizing money between school districts. If we wait for the constitutional change, look, we're about to get, I think, the 38th state in the ERA in January. We can't wait that long for the kids. So to me, there's an urgency here. If you believe this is all about our future prosperity and our justice, that it's about being fair to kids and giving them the chance and treating teachers as the stewards of the future. Do I want it in the Constitution? Yes. But am I going to work my heart out on day one for stuff that's going to impact stuff that day and the next day? Yes, I am.
Tom, the one thing that's great about this audience and the audience that's listening to us is it looks like America. There is a big and important conversation going on in this country about privilege, right? If you are wealthy and white in America and you live in a good neighborhood, you are probably experiencing one of the best school systems in the world. Yeah. And if you are black or brown and poor, you may be experiencing certainly one of the worst in the developed world in America. When discussing this issue of privilege, how do you fit in? You are private school, prep school, Yale, Stanford business, and it's a great education, and you've used it for good, but you are the picture of privilege in this presidential race. How do you make people believe that you get it enough and you can make that difference?
Look, I have been trapped. First of all, my mother was an educator. My grandfather was an educator. My uncle was an educator. My brother's an educator. And so I have traveled this country for 7 years to talk to people about what's going on with them and their families. And what I've seen is cruelty to Americans. Intentional cruelty based on the idea that we will take the tax money that should be paid by the richest Americans and the biggest corporations, not get it, and then cut services, specifically educational services, for people across this country. And there's something going on here that's so cruel and so straightforward and so wrong that, to me, this is a fight really for the heart of justice and fairness in this country. And that education's at the very, very, very center of that fight. And this is really about how we describe ourselves and how we tell the story of America. But one of the facts that I find profoundly freeing is the fact that the people in this society who are succeeding educationally the best at every level are African American women. And so anytime people try to blame the victim and say it's their fault, it's not that we're not supporting them, it's that they aren't up to the task, baloney. Utter, complete baloney. The truth of the matter is, this is the responsibility of this country, but it's also going to be our great success to give the young people in this country a chance to fulfill their future, their capability, because that is the success of America, and we all succeed when they succeed. So there is no separation here, because everybody will succeed when those kids succeed, and the country will be stronger, and everybody will be better off each time.
Tom, thank you. We've got a question over here.
Hi, my name is Shamika Nichols, and it may not look like it, but I'm a parent living in Detroit, Michigan, where literacy rates are dire. I'm here thanks to Detroit Life Organization and Journey for Justice. All 50 states started last year with a teacher shortage, and enrollment at teacher prep programs is down significantly according to recent reports. What will you do to create a pipeline to recruit, prepare, and retain educators that look like me and that can inspire and empower my children, like Paul Robeson, Malcolm X Academy, and Marcus Garvey Academy?
So, Shamika, the reason that I said that we should put $125 billion into the HBCUs over the next decade was because I believe that we need institutions that do exactly what you're talking about, which is to give young people across this country, specifically African Americans, the tools to become teachers, to become engineers, to become doctors, to become judges, to live up to their capability. That's the start. But it's also true, we have to pay teachers better. Look, there's a reason there's a teacher shortage, and that is because people don't get paid enough as teachers to be able to choose that career however much they want to help kids. So it is about the institutions, supporting the institutions that make it possible, and that is, as an example, what I'm talking about with the historically black colleges and universities. But beyond that, you have to give people an incentive to go into the profession by paying a lot more and by supporting them as professionals the way, lawyers and doctors and architects get supported.
Over here.
Hi, my name is Salima Sabri. I'm a 6th grader at H.B. Wilson's Family School in Camden, New Jersey. Here is my question. Why doesn't my school have money for a librarian or a music teacher or for a permanent teacher for 2nd and 5th grades? Even though schools 10 minutes away have these things.
The answer is profound injustice. That the way we're paying for schools is on a local property tax basis, and that's completely unfair and legislates inequality going forward. And so it is just completely unfair and should be changed at the first chance. It should be changed today. The way we're paying for school is legislating inequality going forward. It's not right, it's not smart, it's absolutely un-American and unjust, and this should be at the heart of reframing justice in the United States of America.
How would you do it, Tom?
Look, the way we're going to have to do this is money, because this is largely a local or state question. And I said the federal government spends $70 billion a year on education. And in terms of, Title I, putting more money into schools that are underfunded, that isn't nearly enough. So the answer, Ali, is we're going to have to budget completely differently from this, and it's going to have to be a much bigger priority in terms of spending, because it's such a critical question for the young people of America, for the teachers of America, and for the future of everybody in this country. It's money.
Money. Question over here.
Hello.
Hey.
My name is Maria Zolivari Kunkel. I've been a proud public educator for 32 years. I'm currently an 8th grade special education teacher from Bridgewater, New Jersey. What criteria does a school need to meet to be considered a success? And how do you plan to support the country's public schools so that they can meet this criteria?
So, when we talk about success, in my mind, for a school, it is not teaching to the test. It is not a one-size-fits-all numerical question about success. It is about a broad goal for that school and those kids. So, for instance, does it include funding the Educational Disabilities Act, making sure that young people with disabilities are able to reach their potential and get the support they need? Yes. Is that going to show up in numbers across the country? No. Is it going to be to start really early and to give people the best chance of reaching their capability? Yes. So to me, the question is, when we're coming up with a plan for a school, it's got to be the broad basis for success for that school. We've got to be consistent in it and fund it. So it's going to be for every kid in that school. And one of the rules that I've seen in life is, if you're taking care of the most disadvantaged person in your society, you're probably doing a good job for everybody else too. So in my mind, when I look at a school system, if we're taking care of the kids with disabilities, if we're taking care of the kids who are coming to school with the most disadvantages, that to me means that school system is probably succeeding for those kids and everybody else. And I would look at that very closely in terms of how schools are doing.
Thank you, Tom. Let's go back to microphone number 1.
Hi, my name is Janine Waddell, and I'm a proud AFT member representing California and the Berkeley Federation of Teachers.
Go California.
Teachers are paid on average 20% less than similarly educated professionals, and we often spend upwards of $500 on our own supplies. Many districts, including my own in Berkeley, are facing teacher shortages, and this has a direct impact on student learning. How do we invest in teachers and recognize that their working conditions, including pay, are our kids' learning conditions?
Look, the whole thesis of why I'm running for president is that corporations have bought this government, and it's not even trying to serve the people of the United States. So when you talk about teachers dipping into their own pockets to buy supplies or to take care of kids because the school district isn't doing it, and not having even an unlimited ability to do that only part of that is tax deductible, you're talking about a society that has completely lost its way. And so when we're talking about attracting teachers to the profession that is going to determine the future success of the country and the justice within our country, and them earning 80 cents on the dollar for people with equivalent educations, that makes no sense. And we're going to have to understand what it is we're trying to accomplish in this country completely differently. And we're going to have to reorient our priorities, because right now, the corporations determine our priorities. And you can pretty easily look across this society and figure out why it is that we spend so much on drugs, and why it is we get ripped off in health care, and why it is we don't have reasonable gun safety laws, and why it is we've never dealt with the climate crisis ever at a federal level, and why teachers are mistreated and students are underrepresented. We are going to have to get back a government that's representing the people of the United States fairly. And until we do that, the corporations are going to continue to get exactly what they want, and they think of education as an expense for them through the tax line. And that is absolutely wrong from the standpoint of the American people, whether they're the students, the teachers, or basic citizens.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are going to take a 5-minute break. Don't leave the room, please, before our next candidate. And please put your hands together for Tom Steyer, candidate for the 2020 election. Tom, thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the conversation.